gonna switch. Assuming it will, it's just on a delay. Hello my fellow haunts, and welcome back to another live stream in which today I shall be continuing to expand my city world, focusing on my base for the time being as per my previous live stream and what I said in the short produced from that. A little later than usual for more reasons than one, as one, it was originally scheduled for past because I wasn't sure how much time I needed today to prepare for this stream, and then all of those technical issues rose their head, pushing this stream back another nearly 20 minutes. But I am here, and I am here to continue working on my streaming world. So, first thing I want to say is that I would like to try and keep all of my activities within this world. I want to try and keep all activities within my world here within the live streams, just because that's how I want to do it, because I've got a pre-thing in my back of my head just in case anybody accuses me of cheating, so I would like to kind of keep things as on stream as I possibly can for these particular live streams that I'm doing in this world. I did have to make one slight exception to the rule there to get a thumbnail for this particular live stream. In that off stream I simply added a ladder up this sand pillar so I can get a view of this area here to take a screenshot of it for the thumbnail here, but other than that I haven't done anything else off stream. This is all purely pretty much right where we left off last time. So today I would like to try and pick up where I left off, in that I would like to try and make a furnace, not a furnace, a automatic sieve for my world, which will get us a lot of resources. And I spent a long time looking around for silver in my previous live stream, even though I was completely oblivious to some in there, which is unfortunate, but it's just a small little slip up on my part and is just something that I don't really need to worry about. So there's one less thing to worry about here. Let's see, believe I already have Invar somewhere here. I believe last time I made a valuables chest. Yep, this is it here. Do I need many more? I would need another 2 more, so that and that is nickel and iron. Right, no worries. I'll do this. So then there's various bits and pieces that I would like to do in this world here today, just to try and get things going for the next stage and phase of it. So first thing is obviously me trying to get some silver, trying to get a automatic sieve up and running for my world. And I would also like to get a planter, automatic planter for my tree farm back there, and possibly lay down the foundations for a mob farm today, but if all of that will be accomplished, who knows. See, and then for this I need more silver. Okay, fair enough. Good thing I actually have some. There's the Invar. Then that's going to require something like this, I believe. I don't know if I could memorize these recipes better. That's one of each, okay, that's fine. So I'm going to need 4 of each then, right. That's excellent. So whilst this is smelting away, what I would like now is, according to my list, 3 more Stirling generators, or these things. Go. That is fantastic. That is a sag mill. Got 1 more up there. So that's Stirling generator. No, I actually have one over here for the trees. It's fine. And I think to help out a little bit, I'm probably going to need a radius upgrade for the tree farm as well, so that's another thing for me to keep in mind. Let's do that. And that. There we are. It's all going to have to come away anyway. So, as I have previously detailed and discussed in the past of my live streams, I'm a big fan of science fiction. Well, I've mainly disclosed that I'm a big fan of science fiction. I've mainly disclosed that I'm a huge fan of horror, and I've discovered loads of different TV shows since branching out from my kind of comfort zone of Doctor Who. I've previously discussed the Ghost Stories for Christmas television series quite a bit on streams here in the past, which is one of my absolute favourite TV series, is my favourite TV series of all time. However, one other that I have discovered in due course over my time of exploring other TV shows that isn't Doctor Who is Out of the Unknown from 1965 all the way to 1971 in terms of new episodes, but repeats of the show led to it ultimately ending in that way in 1972. Basically, the show ran for 4 series total. I'm not into you, alright? You're not hot. Anyways, the show ran for 4 series overall and totaled 49 individual episodes. It was an anthology series where in that all of the episodes were a singular standalone story. And they primarily, for the first run of it, or for the main bulk of it rather, the episodes were adaptations of science fiction stories from popular science fiction authors like Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, John Wyndham, and Frederick Pohl, and even an adaptation of E.M. Forster's The Machine Stops came to fruition, even though he isn't well known for science fiction. That was kind of, or is one of the biggest and most well remembered productions of the series overall. But over the course of those series' first 38, or those series' 38 episodes total, where Series 1 had 12 episodes and Series 2 and 3 had 13 episodes total. They adapted these science fiction stories to great success and to great acclaim, despite a kind of uneven start to the show, from what I have read, in that the first episode broadcasted was see, what's it called? No Place Like Earth by John Wyndham, and the show's creator Irene Shubik didn't want this episode to open up the series as the series opener, as she didn't particularly like the production very much. But it was ultimately chosen instead of her preferred choice, which was The Counterfeit Man, I believe, originally by somebody called Alan E. Norse, if I got the name right. She originally wanted that to open up the series, but ultimately the BBC chose the episode No Place Like Earth out of pure name recognition, because John Wyndham is a very acclaimed and popular science fiction author, having written several classics of the genre, like Day of the Triffids and whatchamacallit, like Chucky, Day of the Triffids, The Midwich Cuckoos, which became the famous 1960s black and white horror film Children of the Damned, for example. He also wrote other things like The Kraken Wakes, for example. But that episode was ultimately chosen for pure name recognition, and I believe that set off the show to a kind of not the best start that it could have done, to my understanding, and reviews at the time weren't too favourable towards it. But ultimately that's what happened, and I believe gradually over time, whereas there were patches of where the show was more well received than others, generally the show gradually improved in terms of the critical reception to it. And many acclaimed productions from the series would ultimately occur. Namely, two very notable ones were The Machine Stops and Level 7 from Series 2. The Machine Stops can be put very simply in terms of a story. It was basically based on a novel by somebody called E.M. Forster, or a novella, I believe, based on a novella by E.M. Forster that is basically famous for having predicted the internet, and that's all you kind of really need to know about the plot of that episode, in my opinion. But yeah, and then Level 7 as well is a astonishing episode of the programme as well, with it basically being about kind of the end of the world and kind of military control. In regards to that, I would have said, if there's anybody here that has watched Doctor Who and you have seen the Patrick Troughton story, The Enemy of the World, might need a cable for this. Always active. Yeah, I might need a cable for this, but that's okay. Yeah, I am going to need a cable for that. That's unfortunate. Alright, so that's okay, that's another thing I can overcome. For anybody that has watched, and to whoever is watching this, if you have watched a lot of Doctor Who, namely the classic series, and particularly in this circumstance, the Enemy of the World from the Second Doctor's era, best way I can kind of summarise the plot of Level 7 is that it's basically a 60-minute science fiction drama that takes place entirely from the point of view of the people trapped in Salamander's bunker. Is the basic and most kind of accurate way I can put it. Whereas it was mainly known for science fiction stories overall. So why is that one? Maybe it's because I've put the input here. Is that why? Is that why? No, it's not. I don't know why that's not working. Maybe if I was to just test this a bit. Okay, that's working for some reason. That's fine. I'm happy with that. Right, so that is my automatic tree farm, temporary auto tree farm sorted. I'm going to need another copper upgrade in that, but that is okay. Another one of these, which is fine. Add that to the list. That one should be okay to make. Whereas the series overall was mainly known for the genre of science fiction and depicted many very acclaimed productions and is well remembered for its elements of science fiction, it was also very much a horror series in many regards, and it's very considerable as a science fiction horror series, and in turn can much be seen like a UK equivalent of the Twilight Zone or the Outer Limits, as I've drawn up comparisons between the two in the past on my documentaries that I will get back to in due course in my rambling here. But see, then that goes that. Yeah, I just need to do that. And that. Okay, it's fine. But the series, whereas it was known for science fiction, was very much a science fiction horror series, as I said, with it being seen like a UK equivalent of the Twilight Zone or the Outer Limits. And it did get quite adult, and well, it was a very adult TV show in many areas. Because it was intended for more of an adult audience rather than family-friendly kind of audience like other science fiction shows by the BBC at the time, namely Doctor Who. And it had a lot of graphic and even disturbing moments in some episodes, like one episode that I'm gonna eventually get back to, Something in the Cellar. I believe had somebody's wrist being stabbed with a screwdriver, of which there is a very striking colour photo from the production of that still online, which is quite a striking visual. How's this doing in terms of... which is quite a striking and graphic visual, as you can imagine. And it trespassed, that might not be the correct word, but it kind of verged on a lot of different areas of the horror genre, I would have said. Actually, I'll just use this for the sieve, that's absolutely fine. Redo. And it kind of verged and went to the horror genre quite often, even though there are episodes that are lighter than others. Like the series was known for having comedic episodes in its runtime. It was mainly known for like hard science fiction and very like serious science fiction, rather than its kind of more comedic ones. So whereas not every episode was there was a good balance, is what I'm trying to say, in terms of what was horrific and what wasn't. In terms of what was horrific, what was science fiction, etc, etc. Let's see here. So I'm going to need, that is that, I can do that, that's okay. So I could possibly do that, but that's going to be that. So 2 hoppers is what I'm going to need for this. So episodes like the Midas Plague from series 1, for example, were much more science fiction than they were horror, I would have said, as an example. Actually, let's put this over here with the rest of my tech and stuff, kind of put it here. And I'm going to need to reset the digger that I had as well. Do this, then so the Midas Plague, for example, was kind of a science fiction comedy type story. Kind of being a satire about consumerism, if I recall correctly. And I'm going to want to put dirt in here as well, as I am looking to get some spruce saplings for in this world. We do that, there we go. And unfortunately, nope. But there are some really interesting areas of the show doing science fiction horror. Like one particularly striking example is Lambda 1 from Series 2. Even though it does get overshadowed quite a lot by other existing episodes of that show and that series, namely 2 being The Machine Stops and Level 7. I find it's a fascinating kind of exploration of kind of science fiction cosmic horror, in a way, of basically these this crew behind a kind of interdimensional travel machine called Lambda 1. Is it Lambda 1? I believe it's Lambda 1, yes. Well, that would be it, because it's the name of the spaceship that they use in it. But this craft is basically used for interdimensional travel as a ways of basically effectively teleporting to an area, effectively, for ultra quick travel. But things basically go wrong with a certain travel as displayed in this episode, and the kind of travelers in it kind of end up in this kind of strange in-between area of reality, and are kind of tormented by these strange kind of apparitions and interdimensional cosmic beings and what have you that we see in the episode. And again, despite some obvious shortcomings in terms of the budget and what have you, it's a fascinating and amazing and striking piece of science fiction cosmic horror, as I have described it, or probably just cosmic. No, definitely I would say science fiction and cosmic horror, but yeah, ignore that. But no, absolutely brilliant episode, and I think it's as I said, a really fascinating kind of exploration of ideas and an interesting display of the show doing horror. And then series 3, which is unfortunately the least represented in the archives by the BBC, as this particular show was another one where the BBC junked the tapes, unfortunately. Reused the tapes, leading to only 20 of the 49 produced episodes left in the archives here today. And Out of the Unknown is another TV show that I'm extremely passionate about, as you can probably tell, in that I have started making lost media documentaries on the show and what have you, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing so. And and whereas they do take a very long time to make, I'm very happy with how they result, so to speak, and just greatly enjoy making them. Bring this up because this live stream is the kind of tie into the fact that I have another installment of my ongoing documentary series coming out on the 20th of June, with this live stream being done on the 11th. This upcoming one being released on the 20th kind of displays and talks about how various episodes, or talks about the restoration of Out of the Unknown, like how all of the episodes came back to the archives and the stories behind that, called Out of the Unknown and the Missing Episodes Restoration. And it's going to be the first in a 3-part video kind of look at this aspect of the series and that kind of piece of history about it. Where was I? So if you're interested in checking out that particular documentary, and if anybody watching this is interested in checking out that particular documentary whenever it releases, there is a link in the description of this live stream where there's a link in the description of this live stream which takes you to my entire documentary series playlist, which features all of my Out of the Unknown documentaries that I've made so far, and all of the other kind of lost media and horror documentaries that I have made to the present day. of which this new one is the 25th overall. Okay. Oh, hello. That hurt. But yeah, if you're interested in checking it out, by all means, go on ahead. It is going for some reason. And there, okay. Okay, no, that's not what I meant to do. That's what I meant to do. Oh, I see, it's pulling from the bottom, okay. No, that and that. There we go. Do I have a spruce sapling yet? I do not. But if you're interested in checking it out, of course there is a link in the description to my playlist with that video obviously being found within it. So the third series of Out of the Unknown again kind of continued the paradigm the series had set up, in that it was again all kind of science fiction stories, and but the big difference this time was that it was broadcasted in colour as opposed to black and white from as the first two series were, with this particular series coming out in 1969, and with it in turn being one of the earliest colour TV series made by the BBC, with the very first one recorded by them being Late Night Horror, which only came out in 1968. For example, and case in point, let's see, I want to do, so that's okay, that will make a chunk, that's fine. Let me do that because I want jungle planks for something here. Okay, then store those and store these again. Not you. But it took quite a while for Series 3 to come out. As mentioned at the start of this video, or earlier on in this live stream, the show overall ran from 1965 through to 1972, if you count repeats of the series that occurred. And in turn, because of those repeats, there was no year during the show's overall tenure from 1965 to 1972 where it wasn't on television, except 1968, where there was when Series 3, which was in production, got delayed for some reason or another. I don't exactly know why at the moment, but I'm sure there is information on it buried within the guidebook on the show as written by Mark Ward, which came out in 2004. Yes, 2004. Let's see here. Which is one of my favourite books in my collection, as you can imagine. Let's see here. But yes, Series 3 I thought that was a Dalek for a moment. But Series 3 ran into some kind of delays or something like that, and it eventually came out in 1969 and was very similar to the first two series again, but it was in colour this time and totaled another 13 episodes of science fiction and had some horror moments as well in it, such as the aforementioned Something in the Cellar. That one, which is the one that I want. That's it. That's okay. That should... Nice, okay. But then things kind of changed for Out of the Unknown when it came to the end of the 1960s. And then the commissioning of the fourth overall series of the show. In that, as I've written in my notes, it seemed at this point that the future that Out of the Unknown displayed in many of its episodes had been achieved, with things like the moon landing having happened now at this point. And other huge moments for the science fiction genre had happened as well, namely the release of Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, which was only in early production at the time of the first series of the show. But that had came out, and as I said in my notes, it seems like the future of Out of the Unknown that the series was typically about had been achieved by the point of its at the point of the conclusion of the third series of it. And I think in part because of that, and because of two of the people behind Series 4 and their involvement with adult thrillers and mysteries, it was encouraged by the person that commissioned Series 4 of Out of the Unknown to prompt the people making it, or would be making it, to make it into strong horror, or strong psychological horror directions instead of science fiction, which is ultimately what happened and what led to the final series of Out of the Unknown, as broadcast and seen in 1971, after a sizable gap again between the end of Series 3 and the beginning of Series 4. If I recall correctly from one of my documentaries, it was 2 years and 20 days in between the final episode of Series 3 and the first episode of Series 4. So as you can see, quite a significant gap there in terms of when those episodes came out. But again, as mentioned, there were repeats of the show that happened. So it's not like people at that time were starved of Out of the Unknown content. They just didn't have anything new for quite a while to sink their teeth into, which was something particularly significant to note whenever it came to the transmission of Series 4. Why is that throwing out? Is it this one that I need to press? Yep, it is that one. Because whilst Series 4 was being transmitted, so happened to have repeats of the previous series so happen to go on at the same time concurrently to the broadcast of Series 4, which kind of further added dismay and confusion as to why this very popular science fiction series had suddenly changed to the realms of the horror genre and had opted for stories of that caliber instead of science fiction. So a lot of people were very alienated, or fans of what the show had been churning out previously had become very alienated with this new change, as you can imagine. And so that caused a lot of confusion and criticisms at the time as to why Out of the Unknown was changed this way, as you can imagine. Let's see here. So set up for branching outwards, so to speak. So I'll need those for a few bits. But overall, with Out of the Unknown Series 4, it kind of was an array of supernatural horror stories, psychological horror stories, and stories of the general kind of fantasy genre. But not in the fantasy in terms of like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, you know, that kind of fantasy. Kind of general fantasy remits within general bits of fantasy within the remit of human psychology, I guess you could say. I think that's the best way of probably putting it. So it clocked up only 11 episodes this time, instead of the seemingly commonly established 13 episodes that Series 2 and 3 had mustered up at this point. The first episode, as broadcasted in 1971, don't remember the exact date of it, don't remember the exact date, but the first episode broadcasted was Taste of Evil, and is unfortunately one that doesn't exist in the television archives. But the next 3 episodes from Out of the Unknown Series 3 all do exist. From the next 3 episodes of Out of the Unknown Series 4 all do fortunately reside in the television archives. That being To Lay a Ghost, This Body Is Mine, and Death Day. Then the trying to remember all of this in order. The 5th episode of Series 4, The Sons and Daughters of Tomorrow, doesn't exist. Then the 7th, Welcome Home, does exist. The 8th, The Last Witness. Am I missing one here? No, the 6th one, the 6th one, Welcome Home, does exist. The 7th, The Last Witness, doesn't exist. Although there is a clip from that, thanks to Australian censors remaining, as when episodes were sold abroad, as that did happen, places like Australia would censor portions of the episodes that they thought would be unsuitable for their audiences, and it so happened that the censor cut from this one was recovered in 1996 or thereabouts, I believe. So that was episode 7. Then episode 8 exists, and that's the last known existing episode from Out of the Unknown that there is, and that's being The Man in My Head. And then after that, the last 3 episodes of Out of the Unknown Series 4 sadly do not exist. Episode 9 is The Chopper, which I will get back to. Then also there was episode 10, which was The Uninvited, which was another kind of ghost story, as was The Chopper. The Uninvited was written by the same person that wrote a particularly controversial episode from earlier on in Series 4, which was To Lay a Ghost, which is one episode that I won't particularly get into because its subject matter can be quite upsetting for some people, of a sexual nature, but that's as far as I'll go for it. And then the final episode, which I believe was had something to do with psychical powers, called The Shattered Eye, was the final episode broadcasted of Out of the Unknown. There was, but overall, out of Series 4, I believe the critical reception to it was much the same as it was for was similar to that of the first 3 series, but there was a certain side of the reception and critical reaction to the series that were of jaded people by the series' ultimate shift into horror stories, and the ultimate shift away from science fiction, as mentioned earlier. So there was a considerable degree of that prevalent in the critical reception to the overall reaction to Series 4, but generally it was seen positively as by quite a few people at the time. As I kind of alluded to, of all 11 episodes broadcasted, like with many similar programs of the time, not every episode does exist in the BBC's archives. The 6 episodes of it are missing, and only 5 of them are known to exist, which is To Lay a Ghost, This Body Is Mine, Death Day, Welcome Home, and The Man in My Head, which are all preserved on their original master formats, I believe, which is colour videotape. The only kind of notable things in terms of the lost episodes outside of what exists of this particular series, other notable things is that, as I mentioned, there is a censor cut from The Last Witness known to exist, which runs for 33 seconds, I believe, from my writing and research. Then additionally, on top of that, it was recovered in 2001, was a complete off-air fan recording of the audio for the penultimate episode, The Uninvited. And if you stay tuned for my documentary, I have an interesting bit of detail and thing to kind of post about the tape itself and how it was found. But basically it was made it was made during the last UK broadcasts of Out of the Unknown, which was 6 episodes repeated from series 4 in 1972. And that was how and where that audio recording of the episode stemmed from. And it's noted that the particular fan who recorded this episode also recorded on audio only the other series 4 episode, The Chopper, at the time of broadcast. Out of all of the lost episodes, there are 2 Out of the Unknown, of which there are many. There is a lot of them that people want to see returned, but the interesting thing to Out of the Unknown is that there's what I would say are the big 4. What I would say are typically the big 4 or 3 of the lost episodes that people want returned is Frankenstein Mark II and The Prophet, both from series 2. Frankenstein Get Off My Cloud from series 3, and then The Chopper from series 4. I would have said that these 4 are the most wanted missing episodes of Out of the Unknown. But there's an interesting kind of thing to this and what have you. I would have said Out of the Unknown had a lot of parallels and what have you to Doctor Who. As you had a lot of parallels to Doctor Who at the time, like Frankenstein Mark II, for example, was broadcasted at the same time as the 10th Planet, the very first Cyberman story. The 10th Planet was, and Frankenstein Mark II so happened to have a very similar story within it. Let's see here. So happens to have a very similar story within it. And then The Prophet gets mentioned a lot as well in terms of seeing or wanting lost episodes back, because this particular episode saw the production of 12 robot costumes, and a selection of these were reused for the Doctor Who serial The Mind Robber, which is very noteworthy, and it gets kind of mentioned a lot when people are talking about Out of the Unknown in connection with Doctor Who. And then the Get Off My Cloud from series 3 was very much Out of the Unknown and Doctor Who doing a crossover episode, which involved exploring people's dreams, I believe, so an Inception like stuff. And then in turn it so happened to feature the TARDIS and the Daleks at various points of the episode. TARDIS partway through, but the Daleks at the very beginning of the episode. And then you have the Chopper from Series 4, which is also very noteworthy for Doctor Who fans, as it featured Patrick Troughton, who played the second Doctor, in the lead character role, playing somebody called Jimmy Reed. And it was also written by somebody called Nigel Neal. Okay then. It's been a while since I've been here. And see. Nigel Neal overall is a very popular, oh wow, nice, cult television writer, having written many popular pieces of cult television, or popular pieces of, or lots of television from the time that is popular in kind of cult circles today. His biggest and most famous creation of all was the Quatermass trilogy from 1950s. How is there another Dalek in the Nether? Did they spawn in the Nether? Don't know. Not that familiar with the Dalek mod. Probably got in through my portal. But Nigel Neal wrote something called the Quatermass trilogy from the 1950s, which was a trilogy of 6-part serials. The Quatermass, they must spawn in Nether then, that is interesting. The Quatermass Experiment from 1953, and Quatermass 2 from 1955, and Quatermass and the Pit, which was broadcasted over the end of 1958 and at the beginning of 1959. And they're very noteworthy in kind of television history and what have you. Just poked myself in the eye, for God's sake. It's a lot of fun. But they're very noteworthy in cult television history, because they're kind of seen as precursors to Doctor Who, which, as you might be able to tell, is quite a big deal for quite a few people. Let's see, let's travel down this way, trying to locate another fortress, which is one of my many jobs in this world, mainly because I want blazing cactoid plants. Let's see here. Okay. So that was his most famous creation, but by the point of him writing the original story, The Chopper, for Out of the Unknown Series 4, for its ultimate 4th series in 1971, he was no stranger for having written things to do with the horror genre and supernatural horror overall. Let's see, and if we were to go this way, and he had written and would write overall quite a few important and interesting pieces of supernatural horror that is very popular with people and still very popular to this day. Like, for example, he wrote a television movie in 1972 called The Stone Tape, which popularised the stone tape theory in regards to the paranormal, which is the idea and concept that stones and stonework can effectively act as tape recorders for spiritual energy and can be replayed at through certain means and certain ways. This is going to take a while to find, isn't it? And then he also wrote The Chopper as well, which is not quite as well known as, to my understanding, probably because it is lost from the archives, unfortunately. But he also wrote other popular bits of supernatural horror television, namely Quatermass and the Pit, and another one called The Road, which again isn't quite as popular as there you go, knew that was going to happen, quite as popular as other bits and pieces of supernatural stuff that he has written, because again it is lost from the archives. But to kind of try and bring all of these threads together, see, where is it on my notes? Basic plot of The Chopper is that the character, as played by Patrick Troughton, Jimmy Reed, owns a motorcycle garage and has recently taken in this motorcycle that the police have given him after the rider recently died in a accident. And it transpires that that this overall is a supernatural or ghost story of vengeance, in that the rider, Pete, and Jimmy didn't get on too well together when alive. So it's revealed that Jimmy Reed, Troughton's character, tampered with Pete's bike, in turn causing the lad to die and crash, and the spirit and or ghost of Jimmy is haunting, spirit and or ghost of Pete is haunting the motorbike wreckage, and objects pertaining to the rider and or ride, and in turn kind of basically just causing supernatural havoc for Jimmy and the secondary characters we see in this teleplay. If we were to go this way, but overall that's the basic overall description and plot description for The Chopper, and it made for a fascinating read, I would have said. And how I was able to read the story of The Chopper is in that, in the aforementioned guidebook to the show as written by Mark Ward, it contains plot details for, or full plot write-outs of every single episode of Out of the Unknown, including the missing ones, so we can re-experience the episodes in that way through reading these particular kind of write-outs of the plots, which provided to be a fantastic way of re-experiencing The Chopper. I would have said I felt that the way that this plot summary was kind of written and kind of presented to us was absolutely fantastic. And in terms of the content of the story itself, and the story on the whole, I thought it was an absolutely fantastic and very creepy ghost story with some very creepy visuals to it, and it just makes it a bit of a shame, or a big shame, that we cannot watch it anymore, sadly, and there is no known copies of the piece in existence. Where have I gone? Oh, all the way up here, and that ghast is getting quite close. Is that another fortress over there? I saw something. Right. And it makes it just unfortunate that we cannot watch it anymore. And the interesting thing about this is that this was the script Nigel Neal wrote right before delivering the stone tape, which is interesting because Out of the Unknown, I feel like, possibly had some kind of precursor to the stone tape. Whether this is correct or not is up for debate, but I think there is undeniable similarities between another Out of the Unknown episode called Something in the Cellar from Series 3, which is also lost, not written by Nigel Neal. But basically this particular episode was about somebody building a supercomputer in their cellar, and I believe, I don't know too much about it, and I believe the person that builds the computer is either trying to contact their dead mother, or the spirit and or ghost of the dead mother so happens to come through on the computer and possess it and haunt the creator of the computer. Yes, it was Nether Fortress. Brilliant. How far is it away? That's not too far away, actually. That is excellent. Brilliant. So whether that... Okay, I was not expecting that. Great. So whether if that can be seen as a precursor to the stone tape, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's undeniable that there is certainly similarities between the stone tape and this particular Out of the Unknown episode. This looks like a weirdly generated fortress here. But I find that an interesting kind of parallel, again, with Out of the Unknown, and I think Something in the Cellar is definitely an episode that warrants further examination by myself in a documentary series, not to sound pretentious or anything, but I just feel like it would be a really interesting episode to kind of examine and what have you in full kind of documentary format, as it is one episode that I don't really know too much about. Not interested in Nether Wart at the moment. Let's see. Take the iron and that. I can actually melt all of that down. It's fine. That's unusual. I'm going to assume that one of the soul sand chests that we see in this nether tried to generate there, but ultimately got deleted by the Nether Fortress generation. That's unusual. It's probably not that common, but is what it is. Moving on. But overall, the chopper is an absolutely fantastic ghost story, and is a shame that we can't watch it anymore. And it is definitely an episode of the program that I would like to see returned and recovered to the television archives at some point. and I am aware that the episode was sent to Dubai in the 1970s, but it wasn't returned, and there's all sorts of stories and what have you, and there's wrong thing to say there. There's kind of things given that the episode may still exist, as there was no kind of documentation of its erasure or destruction of its print, rather. But it's possible that the episode was shipped onwards and subsequently to somewhere in Malaysia. But again, I cannot exactly confirm that. But overall, The Chopper is another excellent slice of ghost story television by Nigel Neal, I would have said. And it's absolutely fantastic, and it's a shame that we can't watch it anymore. And I would have said that there is definitely a lot of, I guess you could say, Nigel Neal-isms in it. There's a lot of his previous two ghost stories, namely Quatermass and the Pit and The Road, that is prevalent in the kind of makeup and composition of this particular Out of the Unknown entrant. See, there's more Daleks down there. It's not good. There's all sorts of creepy moments in the present in the written kind of write out of the plot in Mark Ward's book that I really that I find very interesting and enjoyable, and adds to the kind of ghost story element of it, such as wreckage of the bike at the end of the episode coming to life, and beer cans moving, which is all quite prevalent of when things kind of start going a bit crazy and what have you. In episode 4 of the Quatermass and the Pit. And then there's other interesting bits and pieces, such as all of those bits, such as there's a lot of interesting ghost story elements in it, I feel, and a lot of bits that kind of echo previous ghost stories by Nigel Neal. Like there is at one point, at various points in it, beer cans coming to life at one point, and wreckage of the motorbike coming to life as well, and eventually killing and I believe impaling with a part of it Patrick Troughton's character at the end, which all kind of makes me reminds me of when things start going haywire at the end of Quatermass and the Pit episode 4, where everything around them in the pit just kind of comes to life with all of those cables flying everywhere and what have you. Let's see here. It's a bit of an interesting spot. And then there's another echo of, so to speak, of another ghost story by Nigel Neal, which is the aforementioned The Road. Which basic plot of that was, it was mainly a period piece set in 1775, where these individuals investigate supposedly haunted woods, and the end of the teleplay or TV film showcases an echo from the future of a busy motorway from 1963. Is this the... no, that might be a different... oh wow, hello. showcases an echo from the future, basically, which is this busy motorway in 1963, and obviously because it's far beyond their time and what have you, all of the people in 1775 are quite freaked out about it, from what I have read of that piece. And there is definitely echoes of this in the Chopper, I would have said, in that there is several moments where characters apparently or report to hear not phantom motorbike noises brewing and kind of building up in the garage. So it's obvious that with various characters kind of hearing these noises of motorbikes that clearly aren't there or real. So there's obviously a bit of the road used in this piece as well, and there's some other absolutely brilliant visuals in it, outside of the very interesting ending, which kind of brings everything full circle, which is where it's revealed that it's kind of a revenge story on the part of Pete's ghost, with it being revealed that Jimmy's character sabotaged his bike, in turn causing him to crash. Let's see, I haven't found any blazing cactoid yet. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong area, but I have to go back now anyway. And there's some incredible kind of visuals in the piece as well, outside of the ending, which is, as I mentioned, where the bike kind of comes to life and ends up killing Jimmy's character. Where am I now? See, that's that one. I want to go that way. Okay, I'm back here. Okay, it's fine. But outside of the ending, which is particularly striking visually, there are some other very interesting visuals in it, and kinds of pieces of supernatural activity being displayed and what have you in the piece overall. Like, there's a particularly creepy and like genius moment partway through the teleplay, where there's like a bike helmet, or Pete's bike helmet, sitting on a bench, and it starts oozing this red fluid. We assume it's blood and what have you, but then Jimmy goes up to the bike helmet and tastes whatever the fluid is coming out of it and declares that it is brake fluid. But yeah, some absolutely fantastic and very creepy visuals to this, and it's just a shame that we cannot watch this particular installment of television anymore. And it's definitely one that I would like to see returned to the television archives at some point or another. So get rid of that. No. There we are. but the director of the piece, Peter Kriegin, if I'm pronouncing that right, recalled he needed to work with Nigel Neal very closely to him, and that Nigel didn't want elaborate special effects. He didn't want elaborate special effects and wanted it all rather simply done. With kind of things being pulled on strings and what have you. And I believe this was one episode from series 4 that was received well at the time, but I'm not certain of an overall critical consensus and landscape, as it were, and so to speak. But as given in Mark Ward's guidebook, there was one very positive review given to the piece as by the Birmingham Evening Mail, which reads, Nigel Neal produced a sharp and dank piece of writing. You didn't have to believe in ghosts to be carried along with the idea of Turn Up Pete's ghostly presence in, of all places, a motorcycle repair shop. Neil himself said that, and there's also documentation of Nigel Neal talking about the piece as well, saying it was perfectly alright, nothing special. They had some actors who were good at comedy doing it in a kind of dry way. I would always use humour in things. You can never have too much, particularly if it's creepy. That's the time to use as much humour as possible. But overall, the Chopper, I would have said, easily is up there with my most wanted pieces of lost media to be returned. I would have said, for a lot of different reasons, but I think overall it just seems like an absolutely fantastic piece of ghost story television. And what makes it more tantalising is that we do have production photographs from the piece, but all of what we have in terms of those are in black and white, whereas the original piece was in colour. See, that needs to be that, it's fine. Okay, so it'd be interesting to see what the piece was like in colour as well, but I can imagine it working quite well in black and white as well. But obviously there is that bit with the bicycle helmet supposedly leaking blood, which is obviously quite meant for colour television, obviously. But even outside of that, I can see this story working remarkably well, even if it was just in black and white. See, I can get acacias and jungles planted now. Just would really want spruce saplings, and that would be fantastic. But overall, Out of the Unknown has a lot of various episodes to it that I would like to see found and returned to the television archives, particularly of its horror type of episodes. Let's see. Those would be absolutely brilliant to be returned to the archive, or any particular, or any episodes generally of Out of the Unknown being returned to the archives would be absolutely fantastic. And generally speaking, I don't think I have too much more to say on this kind of subject matter. But one thing I did additionally note in my notes, hopefully this won't harvest the planks under it, so that would be annoying. Just as a precaution, do that. But one thing that I did note here that I don't think I mentioned earlier was that there was an increase of interest in the occult around the time that the 4th series of Out of the Unknown was made and commissioned, with the general public having a growing interest in the occult and things like that, from what I have read in my copy of Mark Ward's guidebook to Out of the Unknown. Let's see. Which was apparently given by popular films of the time, such as the Roman Polanski films Repulsion and Rosemary's Baby, from what I read of the book. And it's interesting the ultimate fate of Out of the Unknown as well, and where it ultimately ended up, because the 4th series was ultimately the last series of Out of the Unknown, and there's a lot of reasons and things I've read about in Mark Ward's book as pertaining to what happened to the show and what might have happened after it. Like, I have made a full documentary on Out of the Unknown Series 4, which I released back in 2022 on my documentary channel. A lot of which could probably be improved today, but still. There's a lot of interesting things brought up about Out of the Unknown and ultimately what happened to the show and what might have happened with it next. Like, I have brought up that in that video that a list of 20 plots that were not put into production by the team, as shown in that episode, as shown in my documentary and as shown in Mark Ward's book. But there was even more that I actually didn't include in Mark Ward's book at the time, that I maybe should have incorporated somehow, but I guess that's something for a new video, something like that, at some point, as I would like to do more essays on Out of the Unknown Series 4 in documentary form at some point later on down the line. I would have said most likely on a new YouTube channel, possibly. The one theory that I have seen pertaining to Out of the Unknown Series 4 and why it was ultimately cancelled there and then and no 5th series came about was that the BBC simply didn't know what to do with it at that point. And not to mention, it was quite an expensive show as well for the time. Let's see. Let's make sure in position for next time. But it's interesting, the ultimate fate of Out of the Unknown, I would have said, because it started off very much heavy science fiction, and then at the end of the day it kind of grew among and kind of ended up among a wave of supernatural horror TV shows and what have you that ultimately came out in 1970 and would kind of be a part of that scene, as it were, among many other supernatural horror shows that would kind of come out at the time, whether it be the last dregs of mystery and imagination, Dead of Night from 1973, Leap in the Dark, which was in 1970s as well. There was also Supernatural from 1976, nothing related to the popular American TV series of the same name from many years later. There's a birch seed one, not quite what I'm looking for. But it's interesting how it kind of started off in the realms of science fiction and then kind of ended at the start of this new wave of and kind of golden age for supernatural horror, not to mention obviously the ghost stories for Christmas films were in full swing in the 1970s as well. So there was those as well. And I find it interesting that for multiple reasons that the show ended up ending in this kind of era and golden age for supernatural horror, because during production of Series 4 it was not wanted for it to fit into the archetypal nature of current and then popular horror series by British television at the time, like Late Night Horror and Mystery and Imagination, which resulted in a couple proposed stories for Series 4 not happening. I think the titles of them were Amanda and Tales of Two Sisters, something like that. So I find it interesting that despite them advocately trying to stay away from the general grounds of horror television that had been set up by the likes of those two series at the time, it also kind of at the end of the day ended up falling into kind of another realm of horror television, I would have said, in this kind of new golden age of 70s horror, with the likes of Supernatural, Ghost Story for Christmas, Leap in the Dark, Dead of Night, and things like that being cropped up and shown on British TV stations and British television at the time. So I think overall that is going to kind of conclude this live stream. I think I've started to ramble a bit, which I guess is the point of these, but I'm very happy with the progress we have made today. Don't think I got 100% everything I wanted to do done today, have I? No, I think I did actually. That's good. So we located another fortress, which is absolutely fantastic, because that's going to help with getting blaze rods and what have you for ender chests and what have you from ender storage. That is going to be good. And then I've very briefly started to prepare for the greater city expansion work. I've decided that this area here is going to jut out in two more chunks here, not all the way up the way, but just a brief corridor of two more chunks there. like up to about here, and then here would be kind of a train station leading, or kind of a train station for me and my base, leading all the way down, further on down this way, where there's more trees and land to build cities on, or parts of the city on, and then I will have the train station kind of going up to maybe here or something like that, where I'll be able to have one district of my city here, which will be absolutely fantastic to get that down, but that's going to be in quite a few streams time, and I do need a few other things for it and what have you, like a automatic clay generator and manufacturer. I need that for the color coding of the districts and what have you that I want to make in this world and general city world. But very happy with my progress here today. I managed to get my automatic sieve working, which is going to help us quite a lot as I kind of generally progress and what have you, with gathering resources and what have you for my city projects and what have you. Then obviously also kind of semi-automated my tree farm as well, in that I've got now an automatic planter as well, which is absolutely fantastic. Just need to put trees and the saplings in it manually, but eventually this will be moved on a raised kind of position, with the actual tree farm being kind of up here and this down here being kind of a room for banners, and kind of wool and dyes from a flower farm, bone meal flower farm, that I will have on another level of this eventually. And then I also laid out my kind of perimeters for a mob farm, which should be in this 2 space here, that 2 chunk space there. And then I also discovered a nether fortress as well. So very happy with my progress in today's stream. So like, favorite, comment, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.